Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Field Pass. This is Dan. I have John joining me for the final regular season preview episode of the year. Thanksgiving week, John. I'm thankful for another opportunity to cleanse our palate after a bad Wisconsin loss last week.
I'm thankful for the ability to move on. I'm thankful for Brett Bielema showing some competence in terms of like not digging his heels in too much in the press conference after the fact. Um, but I am not so thankful that we don't get to think about 10 wins this year. So that kind of sucks.
Thankful for let's go through the list of what we're thankful for. Brett Bielema, despite that loss, we're very thankful for Brett Bielema. Barry Lunny Jr. Maybe a chance that
We get
after
to keep
last
him now.
week that
Yep.
I don't know. Like, do you think there's a chance we retain him, or do you think he's good as gone?
I thought for a second you'd be like, "Do you think there's a chance we fire him?" And I'd be like, "Okay, Dad, calm down. It's okay. Everything's fine." No, um, yeah, I feel like the perfect opportunity will. I honestly think the Ryan Walter situation helps us in this current go round of Barry Lunny getting courted. I mean, it's going to be a crazy head coaching cycle. So I don't really know exactly what's going to open up and what he might deem perfect, but I think we can have a bit of confidence that he's going to wait for the perfect thing just because he saw what happened to Ryan Walters, and Brett will be maybe more in his ear in that sense. But I don't think he really did himself any favors this past week. So maybe he get another couple years. And that's honestly another thing that I'm thankful for is Luke Altmaier getting another crack at him choosing a quarterback, even if it's maybe only one that he's around for a year or two, and not quite the 3 year stint that he had with Luke. If he gets another job after next year, um, I I would much rather have that than having a new quarterback and a new coordinator, while you've got all the fun defensive issues that I'm sure we'll talk about. Um, but yeah, I don't know what your take is, but I feel like he's had an unreal year play calling. He's got all the fun plays, but he's got the good sequencing. He's got the quarterback playing right. He's doing the most of what he can with an O line that's kind of up and down, and running backs that aren't necessarily top level Big Ten athletes, in terms of their pure running back skills. So I feel like he sticks around, right?
Yeah, I've been thinking about it. I'm like, the way money has been consolidated in college football to the SEC and the Big Ten, and it'll only continue to move that way. I think having a good, Big Ten coordinator job is probably more lucrative than, I don't know, a MAC head coaching job or what. Like, where do we think
Yeah,
he's not going to get a Big Ten or SEC head coaching offer? He's not that caliber. So,
no.
what are the options? Does he have an offer from, I don't know, Central Michigan? And is that enticing enough? Or, like, what does that money look like? So, I kind of think he may
Yeah,
end
you can
up
make it
looking
competitive.
out
Yeah.
there, having a few interviews, and realizing, okay, there's nothing that enticing. Let's stay, try to build on the past couple years here and continue to elevate his status and build that resume so that someday he does get a call from, maybe an ACC school or a Big 12 school or something along those lines as his foot in the door.
Yeah, and maybe the worry that we aren't thinking about that we should have a bit more concern over is like another big time Big Ten brand name coming and poaching him. Like, Penn State, they went after big time coordinators from that were standing in Power Four jobs in terms of Kotelnicki, and then oh my gosh, why can't I think of the dude from Ohio State who came from Oklahoma State? Jim Knowles. Um, so they poached Jim Knowles from Ohio State, like the defending. And there's a lot of he said she said on was it poached or did he want to leave? I don't really care. The fact that a standing defensive coordinator from the national championship winning team went in conference to another school that is a big brand, um, when that defense performed very well, gives me a bit of pause that like maybe he's lured away to, if there is some like crazy turnover within, the SEC obviously looks like it's going to have some crazy turnover. So I don't know what it would take, but maybe he gets thrown enough of a bag and a fun shiny toy at quarterback. But I would hope that I have full confidence that Josh Whitman is going to try and get out ahead of that. So that's where I'm probably not as concerned, but that's something that I think to kind of keep in the back of our brains as we're thinking about, well, would he go to, a MAC school? Would he go down south to one of those other G6 jobs? I think maybe he takes a gander at the fact that he's going to have to try and find another. He essentially stumbled into a diamond in the rough with Luke Altmaier, and I'm sure he's confident that he can do something similar again. But finding someone who is arguably one of the program's greatest quarterbacks of all time, like you can't expect to find that again.
Right.
So I feel like maybe he takes a look and says, what else is out there that would even be something that continues to build the resume at the coordinator level. So then when he gets a head coaching job, when higher profile head coaching jobs come available, then they can see continued success as a coordinator. So I don't know. But to your original point, I am very thankful for Barry Lunny Jr.
Barry Lonnie's on the list. We said Brett Bielema. Luke Altmaier is certainly on the list. And I don't know. We
Hank Beatty.
Hank Beatty on the list. These are all players that getting their senior day moment
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
this week. So hope they can go out on a high note, get us to that 8th win, get us to the Vegas over win total on the season that was set. I think
mm-hmm.
it's 7.5. So a lot still to play for. You win this one, you're in a higher, more premier bowl game as well, and see where the rest of the season takes us. But one more regular season test here, and then we're on to bowl season.
Did you see well, I've got like a bunch of different things I want to talk about, but like the non-playoff bowls consolidating. I think I saw there was like a report about that in terms of those or am I just making this up?
I
Are
I
you
did
aware of
not
this?
see that. So you're saying they would take all these like tax slayer bowls and Snoop Dogg bowls and
A
just
little
say like, okay,
consolidation
let's
nation.
got it. I mean, they
Yeah.
have kind of gotten out of control, so I don't think I'd hate that.
Yeah,
Although,
just like in terms of, I think they might be like sponsored by, I think I saw it was like Coke. So like Coca-Cola sponsoring the different like offshoots. Or maybe they just would be the presenting sponsor in all of them, or like the primary sponsor that isn't in the name. I don't know.
gotcha.
It's just interesting because like I feel like it's probably a way that they're looking to package the non-playoff bowls to be like, okay, well, we still want to get some kind of money grab out of these. So how can we, and maybe a brand sees that and says, hey, we'll put our name on absolutely every one of these. And then that'll
Yeah.
turn into some kind of market share that their actuaries and accountants and finance people are thinking about. So,
I don't know. Some of the bowl games too, like schools end up losing money on some of the lesser bowls because not getting
oh yeah.
paid as much. The TV rights and all that isn't high enough. So I guessing from just strictly a number standpoint, that's what they're looking at. Like, okay, we need to figure something out here to make these make sense for the schools' pocketbooks. Because in the
Hmm.
past, we've seen schools just turn down bowl games, especially the premier schools where they feel like they're above those games. Just say, look, we're not even playing in them. And when you don't get those big names playing, then you're on moving farther down the list and kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel. Teams that even want to field a team, and the way guys get into the transfer portal as well so
Oh
early.
yeah.
And I saw
Hmm.
something came out today about transfer portal potentially changing their window, or shortening the
Again.
window again. Every year it's
Yeah.
different. So they still seem to be playing around with that and trying to figure out what makes sense. But I do think it's ridiculous to have the transfer portal open while other teams are still playing games. And I know it has to kind of correspond with the semester or something. So if there's late season bowl games that are going on in a new semester, you have to align with the academic calendar, and it's tough. There's not really a good solution, but I do think trying to figure out a way to make it fair for all schools that still are playing in the postseason would be the right way to do it.
Yeah, I feel like they gotta push up. And I know that like so historically with the bowl season that you'd have it occur in late December, early January. But I think now with the fact that if you're really gonna try and anchor to the academic calendar, then you need to actually do so with making some adjustments. And if your emphasis, especially if you go to a 16 team format, you're going to have all the emphasis on the playoff. So then just knock out the other bowls. Like maybe you can caveat it as like something where you get the same amount of extra weeks of practice, but some of them get to be put on the back end of the game. Like you get to, and I know that like, oh, so our seniors going to be practicing after they play in their final game. But if like you need to pull up the bowl season a bit to accommodate then the playoff and the playoff ending at a certain point in time, so you're not getting like players sitting out of. I mean, like what happened last year with Penn State, where their backup quarterback just goes into the portal while they're making a run. It's like what's going on here? Like you just need to have some kind of there's no cohesion, which I guess we shouldn't be surprised in college football, but at the same time, it's like I guess we can still talk about it in terms of how you make it cohesive because there's just it doesn't make sense. And I am grateful too that like I at least have a good feeling that Brett Bielema is going to continue this trend of, guys not or not a large share of guys turning over before, a bowl game or while prep is going on. That's like the one hallmark of his program thus far is that, retention has been great. So hopefully that is not something that like we have to deal with necessarily, but looking at the college landscape and probably as he's figuring out how to divide resources, that might be something that would be more helpful to a guy who's the master planner.
Yeah. I do want to talk Brett Bielema and last week's debacle. You texted me most embarrassing loss of the Brett Bielema era. Despite all that, which I agree, I do think that was just one of the worst showings, and it happens from time to time. Teams don't show up and play. It sucks. It sucks when you have to sit through and watch that and support that team that week, and they just aren't ready to go. But despite all that, I'm unshaken in my belief in Brett
Oh
Bielema.
yeah.
Like he's got 5 of those before I even think the worst things about him.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
it's unfortunate. It's sad. It's depressing, and it's not what you want. But I do think, some of the sting, at least for me, was taken out by the fact that we were alive for the playoff, but I put that in quotes because, we needed everything to go right. So it wasn't, hey, this is a 2-loss Illinois team on the verge of making the playoff if we just win these last 2 games. The sting would have been infinitely worse had that been the situation. But the fact that it's, we can maybe go 9-3 to, okay, 8-4, to me, the difference there is negligible or significantly less than it is going, 10-2 versus in a potential playoff versus 9-3. So at least for me, I wasn't as completely devastated knowing that was, our situation going into the game.
Yeah, I think the Indiana game was seen as like this big embarrassment because of the offensive output and the fact that you got hung as many points on you as you did. I think now, in hindsight, of course, is my friend in this argument, but knowing how Wisconsin obviously has talent, but the trajectory of their season and the fact that like that's just one where, and I would be infinitely curious to ask Brett Bielema a question about this in terms of just like how you deal with 18 to 23-year-olds and their mindsets and how they don't read press clippings and all that. And maybe that's something that you and I will have the privilege one day, and I can formulate a better question than just throwing it out as I'm doing right now. But like how knowing him as not only a tactician, not only as a planner, as a CEO type, but as a motivator, how you go into Camp Randall with a bunch of guys on your defense that, came from that program last year and a coach who has history with that program. And not that like, he's giving big rah-rah speeches that, like Ryan Walters-esque where it's, okay, you're going to play really hard because I used to be associated with the school. Like, no, I don't think that's his style, but that still doesn't really give you any kind of grace for how poor the showing was because yeah, like Barry Lunny didn't have his greatest time. The fact that they came out and like, I know the discourse around the defense and around Aaron Henry is probably getting tiresome at this point, but the fact that Wisconsin had one of the worst offenses in the conference and Power Four and just like in general, like they were trash, and you let them immediately set the tone with what a 16 play drive that just seemingly never ended and you couldn't get big stops. Like that's just inexcusable for, especially if your program wants, like, I know that you just, I agree wholeheartedly with you saying that, like, yeah, you get like five more of those where, you know, something like this kind of where the bottom falls out before you get concerned. But like, that's something where being able to identify that as like an embarrassment. And he said as much, you know, like in his press conference, essentially saying something along the lines of like needing to get things right. Like he said a couple things that I was like, okay, it's obvious to him what's obvious to us, which is good because sometimes college, especially football coaches, but college coaches in general, just get like very pig-headed, and it's like, oh yeah, this is my racket. You guys don't know anything. I know everything, and that's how you can get humbled very easily. So I think that he sees that, but the fact that you had that tone setter placed upon you immediately and you didn't really ever recover from it. I know there were some missed opportunities, but just like it can't be that easy for them. Especially when you have a true freshman quarterback who hasn't really shown much of anything in terms of potential or promise at the power two level. Like that's not a guy who is like, if he's in the transfer portal tomorrow, is getting garnered by SEC schools or big time programs within the Big Ten. It's like, that's not to say that he's like a bad football player, but it's just like right now as it's constituted, that shouldn't have happened at all. And so, you know, we can talk about that in terms of, oh, why didn't you stack the box, and why weren't you selling out for the run back? It's like, I, it's infinitely frustrating that you didn't get up for that game, regardless of the playoff thing, or like just still like getting the 10 wins, being able to do that, and now having the worry creep in of like, well, Northwestern plays teams tough. Like they just played Michigan super tough, and they've been feisty all year, and it's not a given. And we've got enough recent memory, yes, with a different coach, but still they seem to have that same attitude. And 7-5 starts creeping in, and you're wondering what happened, that you wasted one of the best quarterback seasons of all time in an offense that, you know, was up there in terms of being able to be proficient within the Big Ten. And how do you get only 7 wins out of that? And all these other questions start arising, that some fair, some unfair. But that was just a game that I would like to put to bed and not think about in a couple years, because we've been so successful as a result of bouncing back from that and changing a couple things in the program trajectory and getting right. Like that would be wonderful if it's like, oh my gosh, yeah, can you believe that we went up to Camp Randall and lost as badly as we did when the records were inverted for each team. But you know, we'll have to see on that front. But it's still, you know, stung and is disappointing. But seeing him get emotional talking about the seniors and knowing that, you know, this is the final home game for a guy like Luke, and you know how much Brett appreciates, enjoys, and loves him. That's something where I'm confident that they'll bounce back, but we'll see.
Yeah, the two things that bother me most in the Wisconsin game were special teams, another Keelan Crimmins issue, not getting the punt off, and then a missed field goal, which was rare from David Alano, but you know, those things compounding themselves in games like that. You just can't have those mistakes. And it's the little things. Brett Bielema has always talked about, you know, playing smart, tough, dependable football. And seems like special teams has been anything but this year. Aside from Hank Beatty being an incredible return man, we haven't seen too much on the special teams from the special teams unit. So that's bothered me. And then, you know, as the season's gone on, I didn't feel like the offensive line really gelled. Like you would think an offensive line that returned so many starters, looked really good at the end of last year, has not really. I know they had their issues early on and stuff, but you'd think at the very least they'd get right as the season continued. And Wisconsin just found ways to get in the backfield all day. Couldn't really keep Luke upright, and you know, that's frustrating and a little bit alarming too. So we're probably going to hit the transfer portal hard and hope that some of these younger guys are ready to go and take a step forward. But you know, still another opportunity for them to get right here and prove themselves. JC Davis has been great. I mean, he's one of the highest graded left tackles all season long. But you know, Melvin Priestley, I thought, has played better the last couple years, last couple games, aside from the two penalties late in the game, which is just pure frustration. Can't happen. But interior O line has not really taken the leap that I was hoping for. And So those two things, special teams and offensive line, have kind of given me some concern here.
I think, especially as we're talking about like the program in general, I think that that'll be another like kind of indicator. So I think the one thing that we can point to, and one thing that we talked about, the three of us when it was the three of us, and then you and me, is like the fourth down decision making, in the early part of Brett Bielema's tenure. That's something that's been identified and adjusted. Love that. Love to see that. Maybe some of the loyalty items with elevating Henry could have been better, but maybe he learns from that. Um, and I hope he does. The offensive line, either the talent identification or the development of them, is kind of this like almost um not unspoken, because I think people know about it, but it's the undercurrent of like, is this like a bigger issue that we need to think about like in 3 to 5 years? Maybe we do address the defense and bring in like a another great defensive mind similar to Ryan Walters, who gets everything or gets most things corrected and right. Great. Then on to the next thing that we get to complain about, those who are either on social media or who have podcast mics. Like, we're always going to try and find something, because obviously we want the team to be as good as possible. But to your point, like, that's just something where it's a talented defensive front for Wisconsin. I mean, I know that we both liked Mr. Cheeks out of good old Evanston when he was
Yeah.
going to North Carolina.
Although we did take three of their defensive line, so it was a new defensive
Well,
line, but
did they maybe see, that might be something where maybe they had, and I'm not going to say they had a better inkling, because I would have to look more on balance at the defensive output for their D line versus ours over the balance of the season, not just last week, and not just like what I know about our D line versus the more anecdotal evidence that I have from them. But like, maybe they were like, hey, we're fine with seeing these guys walk, because we know that we can either find better guys or that we have better guys, which
yeah.
is a concern in and of itself. But for the O line, like, that's something where, yeah, maybe you're not going to have an A1 game from JC Davis every single time. I do think that kind of felt like a bit of Duke, and definitely a lot like IU, where it was just also kind of on whether it's Barry or Luke. Sometimes a lot of the times quarterback, or I shouldn't say, sacks are becoming more of a quarterback stat nowadays, I feel like. And that's not to say that, getting beat off the edge as many times as the O line was not Luke's fault, obviously, but that's something where identifying that quicker and knowing where you're going with the ball, or calling plays that are going to get the ball out quicker. And it's very simple and rudimentary, but just being able to connect those dots and see how, like, yeah, we saw that a bit against Duke. It got exposed against IU, and then it was corrected for a majority of the remainder of the season. And then it kind of reared its ugly head again last week. So I'm curious if we see maybe more quick hitters, or if we're seeing Luke get the ball out a little bit faster, or maybe some more action and misdirection. But yeah, and maybe it's just they didn't respect the running threat at all, and so they were just pinning their ears back and getting to in rush stances rather than playing any kind of run fit as edge players. So like, there's a lot to, in a loss like that, there's going to be a lot to dissect. But I think as we're processing it, like, the sting sucks. You can get over it very quickly by being Northwestern, of course. But then projecting out what are some of these things that we're identifying, like Barry Lunny Jr. having a bad game, I don't care about, because I know that he's going to be able to get that right. That's not something I'm worried about. Luke Altmaier, even if that was like, if we were talking about the sacks being mainly attributable to him, I don't necessarily worry about that. One, because he has 1-2 games left, and he's not here next year, so like, don't have to worry about, like. But then these little undercurrent things that are like, okay, are these bigger items? And to that end, is the O line, that development being, seemingly like last year, oh, they're getting it figured out, and then they regress last week. Like, is that, or maybe they weren't necessarily gelling as well as they could have been during the middle of the year, and they were just getting bailed out by the fact that Barry Lunny was calling all the good plays. Like, I don't know. So that's
Yeah.
something where seeing how we attack the transfer portal and how the development of people in the program already, that's going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, to your point about the O line, my thoughts there. The depth is certainly improved from what was inherited, what Brett Bielema inherited. He's
Yeah.
rebuilt it, but my question is more like the top end starter talent, and is it really, you know, upper echelon Big Ten talent? You got a guy like JC Davis, who certainly is, and Melvin Priestley was supposed to be that. I don't think he's quite lived fully up to that billing, but you have better backup depth. The matter for me is, can we find that top end talent? And I don't know. I wonder if Brett does reevaluate his stance after seeing Indiana's team last year with all those transfers, Texas Tech this year building entirely off transfers that they're bringing in. Like, does that new data start to change his opinion? Because he's talked about wanting to be this development program, and maybe you realize, well, it is better to just go snag a proven starter if you can get them. And I know it's easier said than done, but I wonder if that creeps into his mind at all.
And I got to imagine it does because like even the fact that they're hosting as many JUCO O linemen, like that's a clear indicator of them looking for proven production. And like I would imagine that they try to go like even like the JC Davis route. Um, they want to probably see tape and proof of concept instead of just taking like I know a guy like Miles McVay when he was transferring from Bama and went to North Carolina, and I wouldn't even be surprised if the stuff with Bill and Jordan end up taking things with North Carolina South. If like a guy like Miles McVay is back in the portal, I know he's gotten more snaps this year, so maybe they would have enough tape to make a determination that if they like him or not. But that might
Yeah.
be something where maybe they didn't prioritize him as much in terms of an asking price for dollars and how they're doling out resources and essentially what's their salary cap. If they were like, well, we don't value that extra, half a million or a million or whatever, because we just haven't seen it. Whereas another guy, maybe we would give him more money because we know based off of all this JUCO tape or this competition that he's put in recent vintage out on the field. Like that's something we can get comfortable with. And it's still a risk, obviously, because it's not high level competition, but it's still more. So I think that they're noticing that and not just being like, okay, well, these guys who haven't taken any meaningful snaps other than special teams in our program, unless they're like 4 or 5 stars or we like really feel good about them. Maybe we don't just lean on that and rely on, oh yeah, these guys that now are finally getting to their third year in the program, they're going to be the ones to really anchor this offensive line. Because like I think you could maybe do that next year and see what happens, but I don't think that's necessarily the best strategy to go out there and win next year. So I
Yeah.
don't know. Maybe it helps in the long term, but
It is rivalry week. I gotta ask, is this one of the best weeks of sports consumption uh, for the year? Because it's feast week in college basketball, it's rivalry week college football. There's NFL games for Thanksgiving throughout the week. There's college football on Fridays. NBA
there's
is still
NFL
going
on
on. You
Friday.
got NHL going on. Pretty much baseball's the real, the only major sport not playing. I got to think this is one of the better weeks
No
of
horse racing.
sports. And people have the
No,
weekend off, holidays.
yeah, it's got to be one of the best in terms of, and I know people usually end up griping about like the late football game on Thursday, but it's like we're still getting NFL games on a Thursday, and then the fact that now they've thrown us the bone of Black Friday football for the NFL, and you get some college football.
It's like
Um,
good college rivalry games too. It's not just,
that's the
you know,
thing. Yeah, you get like I feel like the NFL can placate just because it's like high level football and people always have their fantasy things that they are intrigued by. So it's like you watch for that, but then you have great college football just because like even I know that we were texting about this earlier, but like a rivalry game like the Iron Bowl, like yeah, I don't think Auburn. If you look at these two teams on paper and you match them up in week 7, and you take away the names Auburn and Alabama, I'd be like, oh yeah, the team with all that talent and with the proven stats, like they're gonna go out there and they're gonna smoke them. But
yeah,
then you get just something special for Thanksgiving week. The
there's
guys
the
got a little extra
lore,
play for.
all
Uh
the
huh.
history, and it
Yep.
just guys play tighter. Same goes for Michigan, Ohio State. It's,
Yep. Yep.
the game that everyone's tuned in for. And despite how good Ohio State has been, they have their struggles with Michigan, and Michigan's had
Yep.
struggles with Ohio
Yep.
State in the past when they've been the clear better team. And it's just
Mm-hmm.
something with the rivalry games that makes for a good weekend of college football. So I'm looking forward to it. Another trophy game, Illinois Northwestern. We want the
Yep.
hat. I wore a
Yep.
hat today just in honor of it being a hat game.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But there's bragging rights at stake. Here's another question for you. In your mind, who is Illinois' number one football rival? Do you view Northwestern as our number one rival, or do you have kind of a different
Yeah.
rival? I know historically and, you know, technically they're our rival. We have several trophy games or whatever, but like, do
Mm-hmm.
you view them as our biggest competition?
I feel like The default is yes, especially now that we don't have divisions anymore. I think I could have gotten around to Wisconsin and Iowa being more of a rivalry from both a recruiting sense and from a on the and on the field sense, and playing them each year and that developing maybe more than a Northwestern where, that is obviously proximity, the state, the recruiting grounds.
Even
But I would,
Purdue, a couple like the
yeah,
last
yeah,
couple of
yeah.
years has kind of had
Hmm.
the storylines and stuff,
Yeah.
but
But
I think it's Northwestern still. Like
I think I think it is Northwestern.
we don't
Yeah.
have that real bitter rivalry of, a Michigan, Ohio State or a Duke Carolina or anything along those like an Egg Bowl and Iron Bowl. We don't really have that same history because these aren't two historic winning programs. But I agree. I think it is still Northwestern. I figured I'd ask because there are a couple teams like that
Yeah, no,
I
it's a
I
good
kind of
question. Yeah.
compare us to more in
Hmm.
my own
Hmm.
head, whether it be
Yeah.
Iowa or like Wisconsin, like you say. But they don't. There's no bad blood necessarily between those programs and us. It's more of like
Yeah.
comparatives.
And now we're not like even we're hardly playing them. It's like we're seeing them every so often, so it's like they're in our minds for more recruiting things. But like you're recruiting against some of the same names when you're going up against the Midwest powers that be. I mean, it's like Cincinnati sometimes is sniffing around the same recruits as us. It's like, I mean, I don't really care about Cincinnati at all, other than give us all your good players. But like the fact that we have those two secured games against Northwestern and Purdue makes them the easiest candidates. I think if Fitzgerald was still there while Brett was bringing the program on the ascent, like you would have these two, classic Big Ten coaches, both in like kind of the same age range, developing or like, aging with their respective programs. Like they're not going anywhere. And so you'd really, I think you'd get the rivalry settling more.
Right.
Um, but now with them having and a new young coach is kind of fun, but like I'm not expecting for them to be as consistent or as gangbusters as they were some years under Fitzgerald. So I feel like that's still the natural rivalry, but to your point, it's kind of like because of the the historic nature of the winningness of the programs, it doesn't really feel like it's got all the bad blood of some of these more marquee ones.
Yeah, I mean the trajectory David Braun's got his Wildcats on is impressive, and they have the shiny new toy with the new stadium coming. They have that beautiful facility on the lake, so they have plenty to kind of sell in the recruiting scene. But I just don't feel like there's been that same, uh, you know, rivalry when it comes to recruiting. Like living in Chicago, I don't feel like there's constant, battling of fan bases, like who's better because. I just don't. I think we kind of both operate in our own little bubbles, and we don't really see each other as these bitter rivals. So,
Yep.
rivalry game nonetheless. Still, like I said, a lot to play for. Bowl situations. You want to get in a Premier Bowl and head south rather than heading to the it used to be the Meineke Car Care Bowl up in Detroit, and some of these other bowls out in I don't know.
You were talking
Vegas
about
has a
the
decent
the
bowl,
Wasabi Bowl.
the Wasabi Bowl out in Fenway, or the Bad Boy Mowers Bowl at Yankee Stadium, the Bad Boy Mower Pinstripe Bowl. Still some good bowls out there. I we
Not
talked about
those.
it. We talked about it last episode. I called for Illinois Mizzou in Nashville. Both teams lost this week. Both teams could win and finish 8-4, and I think that would still be my ideal matchup. Um, I wouldn't mind an LSU matchup as well if we could get them somewhere, whether it be back at the ReliaQuist Bowl out in Vegas. I don't know what the bowl allegiances necessarily are, but uh, Music City Bowl with LSU or Mizzou, or the ReliaQuest Bowl with Mizzou, or I guess probably not Mizzou, but LSU potentially. I could see. No, it could probably go Mizzou if Mizzou won, but it comes down to the pecking order and whose fan bases are going to travel and all the different calculations that these bowl committees make to see. Like at the end of the day, they're looking to make the biggest profit and what's going to get the most eyeballs and get the most fans and ticket sales and souvenir sales. So if it's Illinois versus Michigan or whoever that has the same record, a school like Michigan's usually going to get the nod at some of these big bowl opportunities, but I could still see us getting a pretty good opportunity.
Yeah, I I feel like it's fun to project out, and I like that we have a large swath of bowls that we can still make and attend, and it's fun to think of, going to California or Vegas or the downside, not so fun to think about going to New York or Boston, but like it's still fun to like have the conversation or riff about the fact that there's a bowl named after a side dish at a sushi restaurant, and it's just like, oh well, that's cool that like we're not wringing our hands like, Northwestern fans probably, well, they would have been if they had lost to Minnesota. So like last week they were more so thinking like we just got to get bowl eligible, and now they can have some fun with that, but it's still not quite the same, like I was saying, the swath of bowls that they can think about. But I'm sure they'll still be motivated not only to beat us and get a better bowl and all that good jazz, but I I just I don't want it to. If we get to 7-5, it's going to be very, very depressing based off of what really could have been. And I mean, it's still like objectively looking at it, it's a successful season, regardless. Just because of I like what Brett said in the press conference in terms of like we're still cutting through water, we're not taking on water, like it's still a pretty good boat. I like that. That's a fair assessment of where where it had been and where it's currently at, and obviously you can always make improvements and turn the boat into a ship. I'd love to see that, but for what it's at right now, 7-5 doesn't kill you, but I'm definitely not rooting for that. So let's go out there and get the that eighth win.
Can I tell you what scares me about this matchup this week?
Yes,
For me, it's the
for you.
snow
Mm.
in the forecast.
Do you not think that we're a snow team? Do you think Northwestern's a better snow team than
I
us?
think Northwestern, something about Northwestern and the purple uniforms, they always seem like they're just built for snow games. And I don't think like we've evolved into this
Yeah.
kind of flashy
Yep.
offense.
Mm-hmm.
Usually the team that just is boring and runs it and, has good blocking and wraps up when they tackle and all those does the little things right. Like those are the teams that usually win the ugly games. And 7 to 8 inches of snow potentially in Champaign on Saturday has me a little nervous because I don't know. Northwestern's just that team that I feel like you put them in snow and they're always going to keep it close and make it
Muck it
ugly.
up.
So
Yep.
I get a little nervous about the snow in the forecast right now.
I mean, we were just talking about how we weren't feeling great about the offensive line. The running backs have not been as productive as we would have liked, and there hasn't been any like the Aiden Lawfrey end of the year last year was like, okay, this is at least a good sign, even if maybe there was some volatility within that. Like there's at least one constant. This player is doing well. I like that. We haven't really seen that from the running game, and I don't like that. A little bit too much up and down, and I can't imagine that if we're getting into a snow game that, yeah, we're going to be able to as reliably lean on Luke's arm like we have been. But maybe you just unleash his legs a little bit more, get him a 200-yard rushing game, 200-yard passing game.
How
Maybe get
about
some fun.
the stat that Robert dug up and highlighted that we're dead last in FBS and yards after contact from our running
I've been thinking
backs?
about that. That has been something where like I've tried like subtextually like put that into some of these thoughts, but like that is and it bears out too, like from what our eyes are telling us, like yes, maybe they're getting hit and falling forward, but they're not breaking tackles, and they're not really like there's not been the explosive runs that we would like to see, especially from a Brett Bielema team that usually prides itself on having that kind of exposure in the run game. So yeah, that was a not great stat from how alarming it was, but it was a great find in terms of like this matches what our eyeballs are telling us.
Yeah. I mean, we thought Khalil Valentine was going to break out early in the year, and he kind of started to, and then I feel like he's kind of plateaued, and we haven't really seen too
I
much of
wonder if that
a.
injury is still kind of hampering him. I mean,
I
he
gotta
got his
think.
like turn, dude.
I
Like
thought his
that was
season was
a bad.
done.
Yeah, yeah. Like it's great that he's back, but I still don't know if he's like 100% healthy. I know no one's 100% healthy after like the midway point of the year or after 3 games, but like that was
Yeah,
crazy.
Caden Fagan had the shoulder issue during that one game
Hmm.
where
Hmm.
he landed weird and kind of hasn't necessarily been the same. It hasn't seemed like Aiden Lawfrey's gone through his injury bouts this year, so I
The
that
entire year,
room
yeah.
certainly is not fully healthy, but despite that, not a great stat that we aren't. escaping tackles. And I doubt that this is the team we're going to start breaking tackles against because Northwestern's that fundamental team. Like I said, they'll square you up, wrap up. They do everything the coach tells you to do. And
Uh-huh.
they may
Uh-huh.
not have the best top end talent, but they're going to play hard. And that makes me nervous, especially when the field is kind of neutralized a little bit by the elements.
You know that kid Fitzgerald on Northwestern is just going to be running around in the snow, putting his head into everyone's chest, not giving a care in the world. And that, yeah, that's something where I see lots of replays of like him coming up from a tackle with like snow and like part of his face mask. His face is all red. He's screaming, and I'm just like, all right, well, we're still not running the ball well on 3rd and 1. Why can't we get it? Why are we taking shotgun snaps on 3rd and 1 from our own 45? Like get under center and bowl them over.
You know how we neutralize that though?
How,
Our
Dan?
our Florida boys wear their hoodies. When the Florida boys put on
Yep.
the hoodies,
It's
they
different.
reach a new level. So when Gabe
Yep.
Akis has got his little hoodie Gabe, as we call him, once the hoodie comes out, he's a different animal. Same with those cornerbacks, defensive backs, all those Florida boys. They're not used to the snow. They're going to be wearing the hoodies, and I think that might be the key to success this week.
Yeah, this is like when the Cubs in their playoff runs, all the Dominican or Central American guys would put on their little like half like
Starlin
the
Castro, who are some of the
yeah,
guys that would do that?
Javi Baez,
Baez,
who is the outfielder, the big right fielder whose name also, wow, I'm not doing well with names. I'm turning into Robert and not remembering people's names, but the chain gang where the big 6'5" outfielder who
Soler,
he's yes, thank you.
Jorge
Yep.
Soler.
Jorge
Yeah.
Soler, yeah, he's still playing. Like I remember seeing him on I think a playoff team this year, and I was like, oh, that's nice to see that he's still the Duke could actually absolutely mash. So I'm glad that he's still in the league. But yeah, he was the first one too. Like if it got cold, it got like 50 degrees, that man would put on his little dicky and his hoodie, and he looked like the coldest man to ever exist. And I didn't love it for baseball, but I do love it for football because anytime you can add some kind of like accessory to your look, that just look good, play good, and it's as simple as that. So yeah, the Florida boys put on maybe a little extra layer, maybe an unnecessary layer, but hey, go out there and make some plays.
We are the home team as well. So, we're going to have those nice heated benches and the helmet warmers and everything we need to be comfortable on the sideline. Hopefully,
Hmm.
Northwestern doesn't travel all their fancy equipment because it's still under construction at Ryan Field.
Exactly.
We
Yep.
have the off the field advantage this week. But do you have a score prediction and your player of the game this week?
Score prediction with the snow. I'm
I
gonna
will say
go.
before you get into it, Illinois 6.5 point favorites, just like we were last week against Wisconsin. So don't let that scare you.
I'm going a very basic score, 17-13 Illinois. I
Ooh,
think I think they find a way to pull it out. But with the conditions in mind, I don't think they're going to be getting much by way of generating offense. But I guess sometimes snow works well for like they call them snovers, like the betting the over in a snow game because the offense knows where they're going and their feet can get to a spot quicker, and the defensive guys have a little bit more trouble tackling and whatnot. But I just don't see these teams having that overwhelming athleticism where it turns into a huge advantage. And like you were saying, maybe it gets mucked up more than anything. So um, I'm going 17-13 Illini. And in lieu of everything we just said, we're going to give, or by we, I mean me, Caden Fagan. He's gonna get the rock, and he's gonna get his feet churning fast enough. Maybe start him like 20 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and then just pitch him the ball when he's like 10 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and just let him run straight forward in the snow and just bowl dudes over. And I think I just created the greatest offense ever. So I think jokes aside, I think he's gonna have a productive game.
he is so good when he gets up to speed, but sometimes he takes so long. Like he's got to get some momentum going. So I
Yeah.
do kind of like that idea. Maybe Caden Fagan, instead of, lining up 8 yards, 10 yards in the backfield, you push him back an extra 10, get that full running start. So we hand it off. He's just bursting through the line of scrimmage with unbelievable force.
It would be hilarious because it's just like you can't obviously be moving forward before the snap. So at the snap, you just got him 20 yards back, just full fledged running, and you're having to do like some. See, what the thing that you got to do is you got to set it up with some misdirection. You have him start way back there, and then you run plays to the other side, and then you keep running plays to the other side so much that as he's running forward, the defense forgets about him just a little bit, and then you fake the pass, and then you immediately you do a 360 and you throw it to him in the flat as he's got 19 miles per hour of speed
Yeah.
building to 21. So I think we just figured it out.
Force equals mass times acceleration. We know he's
Mm-hmm.
got the mass, so we need to figure out a way to just increase the
Get the
acceleration as much
acceleration.
as
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't, this is foolproof. I don't know why Barry Lenny doesn't hire us as special assistants.
I like your Big Ten West ugly football score prediction of just a low scoring game. That
Mm-hmm.
just reminds me of all the 11 a.m. Evanston games. It is
Yep.
of note
Yep.
that this is a night game in the snow too, which will make it even more
A
fun.
beautiful
The bright
aesthetic. Yep.
lights
Yep.
should be fun. I'm going to go with a senior this week, a guy who's played a lot of cold weather football. His high school team seemingly was in every state championship game, so you know he's played in late November games his whole life. That's Hank Beatty. I could see him winning us a game with just a couple great plays in the snow, keeping his balance, bouncing off a tackler. He seems like he's built for these kind of games. So
A
I'll
return
take
touchdown, maybe. A passing touchdown, maybe. A
maybe
rushing
something like
touchdown,
that.
maybe.
Maybe he does a sno angel in the end zone after he scores a
Oof.
touchdown.
Ooh. That would be nice.
So Hank Beatty's going to be my pick of the week. I'm gonna go with Illinois to win this one in a 21-20 battle of the century. A hard fought game in the snow.
Throw out the record books.
I kind of I'll say that the 21-20 is because Northwestern scores late, and rather than kicking the extra point to try to tie the game, they go for two, and Gabe Backus, hoodie and all, gets to the quarterback, gets Preston Stone to the ground, and Illinois walks off. Similar to the Purdue overtime game where Dylan Rosiak got the sack when they went for
Mm-hmm,
two.
mm-hmm.
Give me Illinois stuffing a 2-point conversion to win the game 21-20.
Yeah, or maybe they're down 2014 late and you get a
No,
late pass from
no.
maybe you
21-20
line
on
up.
a stuffed 2-point conversion. The
Wouldn't
only
this be
way.
fun, Dan? Because Caden Fagan also played high school quarterback. What if you had a pass from Caden Fagan, direct snap to Hank Beatty, or you had
Ooh.
a double pass? You have the Caden Fagan direct snap, throw it lateral to Hank Beatty, who then throws it back to Caden Fagan, a little wheel route in the snow.
Mhm.
Beautiful aesthetic. You just get a picture of the like ball coming out of Hank Beatty's hand, and then Caden Fagan. Like I'm Caden Fagan in the foreground, Hank Beatty in the way background. You can see the ball just leaving his fingertips wide open. I love it.
So
But it's your score, not my score. So I'm just imprinting upon what I would like to see at 21-20 because that is infinitely less stressful than a 21-20 and we have to think about a 2-point conversion.
I did see someone mention Caden Fagan. Should they switch him to linebacker or switch him to tight end or something? Do I recall that his freshman year he was on special teams on like kick coverages and stuff? I want to say I
He
remember
might
him
have been.
making an unbelievable
Yeah.
tackle or two.
No, that was on a pick.
Was
I
it
know
on
the
an
one you're talking
interception?
about. It was on
Okay.
a pick or a fumble because yeah, he absolutely speared a dude and it was great. I think it might have been that Minnesota game where he also had, but I can't. Whatever it was, because I think Brett Bielema in a press conference either after a game or earlier this year or something like that said like you don't mention any other position to Caden Fagan other than running back. Like you
Right.
don't even talk about it. You don't even, I bet they don't even talk about special teams and like him blocking or anything or tackling. So I'm maybe he did, but I'm just hard pressed to think of any reps where he got out there for
I just
actual
couldn't
special
remember
teams.
his freshman year if they had him on kickoff coverage or something where he made a couple tackles, but I doubt he makes the switch. I don't necessarily want it, but I was going to say you're talking about
I mean,
Caden
we are just
Fagan
talking
on
about
these trick
yeah.
plays why don't we put him in on the 2-point conversion, call timeout, draw up a play, put all your best athletes out there, and just middle linebacker Caden Fagan gets the tackle to win the game.
Mhm.
I'm just trying
That
to
would
think
be
of
kind
the
of fun.
Hallmark movie ending to this story.
You get the thing where like bull they run a sneak and it's Caden Fagan and Preston Stone
They meet
diving
at
at
the
the same
summit.
time. Yeah, and it's just like your classic cheesy movie where like they're not really making contact, but then like they both go flying backwards and whatever, and it's just bad acting, but not actually by these guys. But yeah, I see the vision a little bit. You listen, I imprinted my vision upon your thing, and you're not talking about Caden Fagan. I also, as like a little side note, I don't think he's a sudden enough athlete to play outside linebacker. I think maybe tight end, but I
Yeah.
also don't think he's like you need to be quick enough in your route running that it just feels like probably like a Luke Ford 2.0 thing where it's just you're kind of caught in molasses and you got to be a natural catcher of the ball. And not that he necessarily isn't, but I think you stick him at running back for as long as you can and just hope he turns into like a good Big Ten running back.
I was gonna say he's got the physicality, but I feel like his vision for the holes sometimes is lacking. Whereas we know Khalil Valentine could find a hole out of anywhere, but the same goes an outside linebacker or an inside linebacker has to on
Oh
the
yeah,
other side of the ball identify where the hole is and fill
all
the gaps.
instincts.
So
Yep.
it's the same concept, just reverse. So I agree with you. I doubt Caden Fagan's making any switches anytime soon, but
Yep.
Illinois got Illinois to win this one, and I do want to see should we win this one just like Brad Underwood wore the jumpsuit today with the funny hat. I want Brett with like the top, like the Abraham Lincoln top hat, wearing it around with like a little spectacle and maybe like a suit. Maybe I'll AI image a Brett Bielema image where he's wearing one of those old time hats, the stovepipe
Stovetop. Yeah.
hats with the one of those old suits and everything with the spectacle in. And
Smoking either a cigar or a really long cigarette.
yeah, one of those long pipes, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Have him just out in the northeast tunnel
He's wearing a
after the
monocle for some.
game.
Are we just turning him to the Monopoly Man?
Yeah, pretty much. Or like the Six Flags Great America guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
but that's what I want to see this week. Illinois get the job done. Brett Bielema celebrate an 8-4 season. Another step forward for the program. I should say step forward, but not a step back. Maintaining a level of success that we haven't seen in a long time, and see where we can get to in subsequent years. But 6:30 p.m. this week, Illinois Northwestern rivalry game. We're looking forward to it. Hopefully, you all are tuned in, and we'll get the job done and see where we're headed for the holiday season. So, thanks for listening to this episode of the Field Pass. We appreciate it. You can follow us online. We're at the Field Pass on social media. Thanks, and as always, go Illini.